So listen, we ain't even gonna dwell on it. I know y'all saw what happened to the last video. You know what I mean about the JFK files, the one we watched with Pierce Morgan. I know y'all saw that, and if you didn't see it, it's a reason why you didn't see it. But we're gonna keep going though. All right, we're not even gonna think about. We're gonna keep going. Let's check this one out.
And draw conclusions about the huge trove of files related to the JFK assassination. A big point of focus is the CIA. In fact, one of the world's leading experts on the assassination now believes that there is sufficient evidence to conclude definitively that the CIA did have a role in JFK's murder. And there's still new information for you to view online today. Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, says that an additional 13,000 plus unredacted pages were put on the National Archives website today. These files were previously only available in person. Presidential historian and author James Robinault's latest JFK piece for Vanity Fair came out today. He's here. James, you've made it clear that it will take time to piece together the jigsaw puzzle that's now available to us. Are more connections being made as the days go by?
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is that there were a lot of people, including on Tuesday night when the documents dropped, that were saying, oh, there's nothing there. It's a nothing burger. There's nothing to see. Oswald did it. No smoking guns. If you go online, you'll see that all over the place. And the first question you should have for somebody who does that is, it's 80,000 pages. How can you possibly say that? And number two, it's spycraft. You know, this is the CIA, and it has code names throughout it. It's got all of these various feints and the things that spies do that you have to, you know, go through and really understand it. And then you have to understand the big picture. So what people are finding out as they get into this, who really know what they're talking about, there are real clues that the CIA was pretty deeply involved in whatever happened here with the Cuban exiles. And some people are concluding that the CIA was involved in the murders. So it's not done lightly. These people have been studying this for decades, and a lot of them very intensely for the last 10 years. So the thing I would say to start off is that people who think there's nothing there don't know what they're talking about, and they don't have enough information even to know what they're reading.
So Jefferson Morley, that's the person you consider to be the reigning expert on JFK files. He believes there is sufficient evidence to conclude definitively that the CIA had a role in JFK's murder. What does a role mean? Big, small role? What do we know?
Well, I think what he essentially segregated was this intentional conduct by the CIA, or was it malfeasance? Because the evidence shows they knew what Oswald was up to. They knew about him. They were monitoring him. Then they lied to the Warren Commission about it. So why? And in addition, they knew what their office in Miami was doing with the CIA exiles. They had trained them as paramilitaries. They knew those people hated JFK. And so what he essentially says is, I don't think this was just accidental or malfeasance. And the main guy in the center of all of it was a guy named James Jesus Angleton, kind of a famous guy in CIA lore. But he says, you know, this guy didn't do anything by accident. He was following Oswald. He had a 181-page dossier on his desk the day of the assassination. This was no accident. So he believes that there has to be intentional conduct. Whether the CIA actually approved an assassination, whether they were involved in it, or whether they stood by and watched it knowingly, he thinks they knew and that they have a role that they played.
Agreed. So much. I agree with so much he just said. And the reason being because when you zoom out of this thing, right? The main question you should be asking yourself is, who had the most to gain? Who had the most to gain? And I think that's how they were able to continuously evade the public scrutiny. Don't get me wrong, it was there, but it couldn't really stick to them because it was multiple that stand a lot. You had LBJ, you had the CIA. You know what I mean? It was so many different ones that stood to gain from Kennedy being gone. So for me, that's the constant question. is trying to figure out who had the most to gain from all of this. And then, and I think that's how they were able to narrow it down as well, to the CIA, to LBJ, to the FBI, to you know what I mean, to the different ones, to the mafia, you know, based upon that question.
So it's quite fascinating, Austin.
So given that, that makes me wonder about Lee Harvey Oswald. How does he fit into all this if there is in fact a conspiracy afoot?
Oswald was the pawn that they pushed across the board. That's what he was. He was the pawn. He was the pawn.
So there's one book, and you remember I told you when you asked me several times who should we rely on, and I said Jefferson Morley and this group out of Mary Farrell. And it turns out Representative Luna, who's going to have a hearing, which we can talk about on April 1, Jefferson Morley is going to be her first person that she calls. So that's a good sign to me that she's reaching out to the right people. But there are two other guys who've been affiliated with Mary Farrell very closely, written a lot about this, who wrote a book, and I used it actually to hold my microphone. It's called The Oswald Puzzle. It's a fascinating book because these guys look at Oswald and they say, well, what was he doing? And they give a very historical, here's what happened. And then they say, and now on the last third of the book, we're going to speculate based on everything we know of what we think happened. And frankly, they don't think he had anything to do with the assassination. He didn't even know it was happening until it did happen. And then he knew he had been framed by some of these Cuban exiles who were saying they were pro-Castro to him and trying to get him out of Dallas to Cuba that day via a hijacked plane of some sort. They've got a very specific set of facts that they put together in a way that they think that Oswald really was being used as kind of a patsy by this group, and he may not even been involved.
Wouldn't that be insane? If there was some way, this would be an opportunity for us to have one of those time machines that I swore off I'd never get in. You know what I mean? But I think Neil deGrasse Tyson made a very point. He's like, maybe one day if you're on your deathbed or something like that, and you have the option to go in a time machine, or as he would say at that time, go in a black hole, but go in a time machine, tell me you wouldn't be wanting to go back to that day. And if you went back to that day and you were able to stand in that room where they say the shot came from, or the position where the shot came from, and you saw that Oswald wasn't even there, that would be insane to see, to know, to hopefully make it back with proof to show everybody. But to think Oswald could have not potentially even have been there.
I don't know that I would go that far. I still need to see a lot more. But the book is fascinating. And if people want to really dig into this, and a lot of people seem to want to really dig into it these days, they should get that book and read it. It's quite absorbing, and it has absolute, here's where our documents are, and here's where this comes from.
So let's talk about Anna Paulina Luna. She has kind of come to the forefront of some of this discussion. She is the head of a new task force that's charged with declassifying federal materials. She recently hinted on Jefferson Morley's podcast that a, quote, smoking gun document, allegedly from a CIA whistleblower, implicates the CIA in this assassination. But do we need to be careful, James, with what some of these officials say? Does Luna, for example, have political clout to gain if these documents do expose a conspiracy?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, she and Tulsi Gabbard and others are trying to make Trump look good in, getting this stuff out when other presidents didn't. And they have a right to say that. He, in fact, is doing that. It should have been done earlier. The CIA convinced him earlier, Biden and other presidents, to keep some of this stuff secret when they really shouldn't have. It was way overreach. So yeah, there is an agenda.
And don't get me wrong when I say this, because he has been the only one thus far that released these documents so far. But we have to continuously say, though, it's still some parts of it is redacted, right? So we didn't get the completely unredacted files. Files are still coming. And then again, why did it take so long? Why were there so many delays? That will forever be a stain and a question that never goes away because it took this long. So,
but I'll say this for her. She was on Jefferson Morley's podcast last night. It was a 2-hour podcast. She started it by saying, I'm going to break some news. Jefferson Morley is going to be my first witness. And that we've been talking with people who have tipped us off that there is a document that it was done by a CIA whistleblower that says the CIA is complicit. And that document's either in these 80,000 or we're going to find it, but we're not going to hold it back. And I'm letting you know it's out there. So yeah, we have to wait and see if it gets produced and what it says. But that's exactly what she said the other night when she was talking about this.
So the House, as you mentioned, will be holding a hearing, and that's going to be taking place on April 1. We know that it was originally going to happen on March 26th, but it was moved back to April 1st because of the number of documents coming out.
That document coming out saying that or stating that, right? What does that do for y'all? Right? At this point, is it a bit anticlimactic for you? Or when that document drops, if it drops, we have to say if because it hasn't dropped yet. If it drops, does that substantiate everything that the conspiracy theorists have been saying? Does that provide more credibility for the conspiracy theories? You know, they like to downplay us. They like to kick us in the back all the time. All those conspiracy theories and theorists, they just make up stuff. Just make up stuff, huh? Yeah, I don't think that's the case with all of them. Most no. Hence, these files and the information that's coming out now.
Jefferson Morley, as you've been mentioning, is expected to be one of the first witnesses. What do they hope to be gained by doing a hearing like this?
They actually talked about that. And that whole discussion is online now at Morley's podcast. JFK Facts is what it's called. So people can go watch it. It's pretty good. It's absorbing. It's a 2-hour discussion, but he's really good. And what he and Luna talked about is not so much that they want to have a smoking gun, which everybody wants a smoking gun. Like this guy pulled the trigger and this is the person who ordered it. Again, this is spycraft. You have to work it hard to see what connections are there and what people were doing. And it takes a lot of work. And so he said, and I think this is the right way to say it, that they want to educate the American people about the background here to put it in its context so that they understand what this information is that is coming out now. Too many people run into this stuff, and I see it online all the time. They throw it into AI. Oh, AI tells me there's nothing there. You have to know what you're doing when you look at it. And so they have said this is going to be an educational purpose type hearing. I'm kind of hoping they'll call Paul Landis too, who is the only living witness, who is the final witness from that day, who witnessed the...
That sucks to hear that. That sucks to hear that. The fact that he's the only living witness that we have. Once he's gone, what do we have? Nobody to lock up. Nobody to get information from. Nobody to be held accountable. Nothing. We have nothing but some files. And I said this before, I think that's the way they wanted it. And with him being the only living witness that can give us information, to me, they succeeded. They succeeded. They succeeded in making us and letting us know that our government is corrupt. They succeeded in so many different ways.
Assassination and came forward with this evidence about where he found the bullet, which to me is still the most important evidence in the last 60 years. The rest of this stuff adds color to who might have been involved, but his revelation says there were multiple shooters. It had to be, given where he found the bullet. So I think with Jefferson Morley, it's a great idea because he's a good teacher, Yale undergrad, Washington Post editor, careful journalist, but he knows how to put a story together and tell a story so that people understand its significance. I think that's what they're looking for.
Yeah, if you can, just rewind and can you explain the Paul Landis piece to this? Because many people watching this have seen you and I do these interviews before, but maybe some folks are just getting clued in. This is their first time watching any coverage related to this. Tell us why that's so important.
So Paul Landis was Jackie Kennedy's Secret Service agent, and she went to Dallas that day, and so therefore he went. He was in the car riding behind the presidential limo. It was his first ever motorcade, along with 6 other agents who were on sideboards, including Clint Hill, who just passed away. And the shooting started. So he was a witness, both eyewitness, and he saw Kennedy's head explode. He saw the whole thing happen, 50 feet away from him. He had severe PTSD from it, but he's also an earshot witness. So he heard shots coming from different places and at different, the first shot was not very loud, for example. The final one was very loud. So he had both that information. But significantly, when they get to the hospital and they're trying to get the president's body out of the limousine, and Jackie won't let him go, she's holding him in her lap. Finally, Clint Hill takes off his coat, puts it over the president's head because she didn't want anybody to see what she was seeing. They lifted him out. Paul, standing with Jackie, gently picks her up and gets her to move out of the limousine. And right behind where they had been sitting, up on the ledge, not on the bottom of the seat, but on the ledge, was this 2-inch pristine bullet, which had been fired by a rifle. It had rifle striations, but it was not deformed. So that's the bullet that we know hit Kennedy in the back. It's why it didn't sound as loud. It probably didn't have enough ammunition, fell out of his back during the trauma of the final shots, and landed where Paul found it. That meant that hit him. It didn't go through him. The Warren Commission said that went through him into Conley, the single bullet theory. That didn't happen. So once we know that's the case, we also know from Zapruder that Conley was shot very quickly thereafter. There was not enough time, if Oswald was shooting twice, for him to cock his rifle, aim, and fire. It took about 3 seconds. Conley was hit within about a second. And so there had to be a second shooter who shot that second shot from behind. And that tells us we have a conspiracy. And that's the biggest piece of information.
Yeah, the Zapruder film, of course, is the one piece of video, the best piece of video evidence and the famous piece of video evidence that shows the assassination carrying out in real time. I got to ask you about the future. Will more documents come out? This is something I've asked you before, but it's something that a lot of people want clarification on. Our understanding is that we still have not seen the 2,400 documents that were found by the FBI earlier this year, correct?
That's correct. Those have not come out. These 13,000 came out. Director Gabby Tulsi
Gabbard, the director of national intelligence.
I'm saying it back.
Yeah.
Well, Tulsi Gabbard, I knew I was saying that wrong, has said that there are some number of documents that are under court order to remain sealed, and they're working on that. So there's still some more stuff to come out of the 80,000. But
why? Why are they still under court order at this point? Like, why? See, this is why people are conspiracy theorists. This is why. This is one of the number one reasons right here. Now, we were told everything was gonna get released. Not in batches, or if y'all heard that, let me know. But I heard it as everything was just supposed to get released. Like, we was just gonna get this big box of files delivered and dropped off to us, and here it is. Have fun. And it was going to be our job to sift through it and get the information. Now, after that, it was, okay, you get this portion here, you get this portion here. Maybe for Thanksgiving, you get this portion. Maybe Christmas, you get the rest of it with a little bow on top. Merry Christmas. Like, what is the reason?
Having looked through all this stuff, if you talk with Jefferson Morley, there's stuff that they still need to go find. There was one guy who was running the Miami office of the CIA named George Gionides, and he was, a central figure in all this, and his files have not even been put into the hopper yet. So we know there's still a lot more to go. The CIA in particular needs to go back and really scour files and look for things that just clearly have not been pulled yet. So I think there's a lot more to come.
What lingering questions do you have about the assassination at this point?
I think the thing that that I really want to know is, I really want to know how much Oswald was or was not involved. I'm now pretty well convinced that the Cuban exiles were involved with him. And so the big question for me is, was he a witting participant in this thing, or was he truly unwitting and someone who got set up entirely? It could have been one or the other, given all the evidence. But I'd like to know a little bit more about that, a little bit more about forensics. Now that stuff is coming out, people need to just keep going back and looking and working the documents and working the evidence that we have. We had a lot of people in both the Warren Commission time and the 1978 House Committee where there were a lot of forensics people. Go back and look at those reports now that we know these new things and really scour them and see what we can come up with to see if, for example, when Oswald was tested on his cheek to see if there was gunpowder on his cheek, they had a test. They can rub something and see it. There wasn't any gunpowder on his cheek, okay? There was on his hand, but we know he had a pistol where he shot a police officer after the assassination. So was he involved or was he not involved? Did he think he had been set up? Did he kill that policeman because he thought that guy was going to kill him? There is a huge...
Never have I ever, in watching crime documentaries or anything else, have I seen where there's so much evidence pointed away from the person that they want us to believe did this. Like, it's so much evidence pointing away from him, saying that he didn't do it. No residue on the cheek. Residue on the hands, but that's from him shooting a cop. Like, the ballistics theory. Like, it's just like, it's all of it pointed elsewhere, not to him. But yet here we are still with him being the prime suspect. I just don't get it.
Huge piece of this that still needs to be answered.
Last thing I got to ask you before we go here is we've been asking our viewers to send in questions about this. This is, of course, as you know, something that's so fascinating to lots of people. William from Tennessee asks, with what's in the files, what does that say about current events? This question touches on something that a lot of people are curious about, James. Is the perceived secrecy that we're learning about in the 60s likely still present in today's politics?
It's a great question. And the answer to that is that if you look at where the CIA was in 1963, that you can go look this up, a month after the assassination, former President Harry Truman, who created the CIA, said, we've got to rein them in. They're supposed to be just gathering information and intelligence for the president. They're not supposed to be both an intelligence agency and an operational agency. And he thought they had crossed that line. Now, I think he probably wrote that because he suspected that the CIA may have some implications in what happened. But go look it up. Washington Post, a month after Kennedy's assassination. And that point then carries us through to 9/11, where, we have this massive intelligence failure, and now we have the DNI put together where Tulsi Gabbard is the head of that. And those people, again, gain a lot of power and influence because of the attacks on our country. And so the question today then is, have we again gone too far with these intelligence agencies? Do they need to be reined in? Do they need to be held accountable? And I think that's the main thing that's going to come out of this exercise of looking at the JFK stuff, is that we've got to be really careful about agencies like the CIA and keep them in their lanes and not let them.
The way I hear it now, they've already gotten too powerful now. And they have, just like with the Epstein situation, it's like they have so much dirt on everyone high ranking in the government that you can't take them down now. Like it's to the point now, we're beyond that point of we're past the point of no return. Like, we're not coming back. You're not going to be able to take them down now. They're way too powerful and have way too many secrets, is what I believe now.
Become operational where they're out of control.
All right, James Robinault will presumably be checking in soon.
All right, so listen, man, y'all got to chill, all right? Because I can already see how this could potentially go wrong. Like, they already vandalizing and damaging Teslas all across the country right now. Now, here we have Elon opening up a new diner in Hollywood, might I say. In Hollywood. Like, man, y'all don't vandalize. Y'all don't do nothing. Please don't do nothing to the man's diner, man. He already said that Doge is receiving threats on a daily at this point.
Elon Musk visited the Pentagon today. He reportedly had meetings with senior U.S. military leaders as an advisor to President Trump. Today, the president said war plans should not be shared with Musk because of his business interests, including in China. A rare suggestion the billionaire's role in the administration will face limits. Now, Musk is about to roll out a new business venture in Hollywood. It's a 24-hour diner and drive-in theater where Tesla drivers can charge their cars while eating a burger. Will Musk be welcome given all the controversy that he's creating in Washington? Well, we asked KCAL News reporter Nicole Comstock to find out. She's live in Hollywood tonight. Okay, let's hear it, Nicole.
Well, Pat, you have to admit, it looks a lot like a UFO. But some people say even though they love that signature Tesla style.
Yo, it does look like a UFO. Why would he? But it looks odd, too. Look at the building next to it. Look at the building next to it. And the building after that. And the building after that. And then you have this giant flying saucer looking building with these odd lights. Like, imagine being the person who lives in these two apartments here and right up in here. Imagine being that person. If that thing is 24 hours and stays lit up, those are some bright lights. Like, you're gonna have to have some blacked out, all black curtains if your bedroom is near that. Oh my God. I would not be happy or thrilled about that. Now, on the other hand, as a homeowner in this area, maybe these apartments, maybe people own these, each one of these units. I wonder, did that drive the price up, or will it? They may be happy for that, but man, that's some bright lights if you try to get some sleep.
They don't want to take this ride with Elon Musk anymore now that he's involved with Doge. But other people say, you know what, Tesla makes great products and experiences, and everything in life doesn't always have to be about politics. It's a new concept. Dinner and a drive-in movie while you charge your car. The Tesla diner is coming sometime soon to Santa Monica Boulevard. But is Hollywood hungry for another Elon Musk business now that he's also running Doge?
I don't want to say anything, I'm sorry.
Because it's all mixed up, the cars, the persons, the politics.
I'm neutral. I'm gonna say neutral, and I leave it up to people to decide.
A lot of people we talked with, both tourists and locals, said they found it hard to separate Tesla Elon from Trump Elon. People have protested outside SpaceX, and someone recently lit Teslas on fire at a dealership. Musk has reportedly been trying to get high-profile chefs to provide the food at Tesla Diner, and many...
That's the next question. Who's gonna want to work there? Who's gonna want to deal with that? It comes with a lot. So if I know I'm walking into some place that I may have to really, maybe the chefs in the back may not see the customers as much, but the waitresses, the managers, you're going to have to deal with people who just come in there maybe just to start trouble. So they'll be coming in and out of there, and you'll be really dealing with issues that maybe a normal restaurant wouldn't have to deal with at this time. So knowing that, going into that, like, yeah, I'm demanding a higher salary. You got to factor in what I got to deal with on a day-to-day. And whatever else you may do while you're on this quest of doing what you're doing with Trump, that could affect this business. Anything with his name attached to it right now just doesn't seem like a smart place to either work, invest in, whatever right now. Right now. It could change, but it's scary right now. So I hope they're getting above average median salary for whatever their job description demands or calls for. I hope they get more, way more. They're going to need it.
They are reportedly reluctant. In fact, restaurants we asked didn't want to be involved in the story at all, saying they didn't want their menus to make a political statement.
It bothers me that he's been given free hand without any legal authority to destroy the jobs of tens of thousands of hardworking Americans.
California bought the most Teslas in the world. And then he turned around and he stabbed us in the back and went with crazy whack job Trump.
But you know who didn't mention politics at all when we asked about the new Tesla diner? Kids.
I like the Cybertrucks. Yeah, I think they're pretty cool.
What do you like about Teslas?
How futuristic and just simple they are.
Even though it looks...
We must preserve their innocence. We must. We must preserve their innocence. That's what we got to do. Right now, you can see it in their eyes. Their innocence has not been stricken from them yet. We must protect that. We got to, man. Don't let them, hey, if you can, do what you can to shield the world from them right now as much as you can until you have no other choice. And as a parent, that's a tough space to be in because you don't want to shield them from too much, but you don't want to give them too much at the same time. So that's a tough spot for parents.
Pretty cool. Their mom told us she thought some people probably wouldn't give the diner a chance.
Do you think that's kind of silly? I do, but sometimes people can't put politics aside.
But others love what Elon Musk is doing.
I think that what he's trying to do is probably a pretty great idea. He's trying to stop government waste.
To shrink the federal government and create a new drive-in experience. Tom Dion thinks people who love the cars will come around to loving the diner too.
If you're going to take that route, I mean, you can find any political stance and boycott any business that you don't align yourself with, but it's a great product. People love it.
And people do love experience-based businesses, so I wouldn't be surprised if this thing is eventually packed when it opens up. We're told there will be food here, but who is making that food? Still up in the air for now. Reporting live in Hollywood, Nicole Comstock, KCAL News.
Thank you, Nicole.